related to living and non-living life forms ranging from microorganisms to trees. Study of micro and mega fossils too is an interesting aspect of research under this theme. Collection of field specimens and maintaining them in repositories has been passionately pursued at the Institute. The MACS collection of microorganisms is recognized by the World Federation for Culture Collections. Collections of microorganisms used in biomining and other bacteria are housed by the name collection data set houses larger acre recognized by fungi terms is recognized. Herb and parts of it. It's a oil such on generation from lignin oil and microbe recovery. A method developed to problem of by the stubble burning of and Haryana, connecting from biological to bioproteins attention of pathologists. It will be mechanism cancer development How behaviors of cells in the developing embryo direct distinct processes. How genes contribute to the overall development are some of the questions which are being explored in the area of development biology. A diverse group of model organisms like Hydra, Drosophila, and zebrafish are being used to address some of the fundamental questions of animal development. Some of the topics that are currently under intense investigation are cell-to-cell communication, molecular basis of pattern formation and stress response, synapse formation at the neuromuscular junction, regulation of autophagy during development, heart development and regeneration, blood vessel development and stem cell biology, genetics and plant breeding. ARI plays an important role in the crop improvement program, means improving crop productivity and profitability without sacrificing ecological and economical sustainability. ARI has all the expertise in developing high-yielding, disease-resistant soybean, wheat, and grape varieties. It is one of the leading research centers under All India Coordinated Research Projects of the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. ARI scientists have so far developed 12 wheat varieties, 8 soybean varieties, and 1 grape variety. In this way, ARI scientists are helping the farmers to boost productivity and making the country rich in food grains. NACS 4028 biofortified durum wheat variety, notified in 2019, supports the flagship program National Nutrition Strategy of the Niti Aayog Government of India, achieving Kuposhan Mukt Bharat. NACS 4028 was chosen for a UNICEF-funded farming system for nutrition project. It was operated through the Indian Council of Agricultural Researchers, Krishi Vigyan Kendras, as part of the National Nutrition Strategy. The farmers are doubling their yield by NACS 6478, a wheat variety bred by ARI. This variety gave higher value of yield, net return and high benefit cost ratio, better nutritional quality with high protein 14%, zinc 44.1 ppm, iron 42.8 ppm, excellent chapati and bread quality. Soybean varieties with reduced anti Telangana and Tamil Nadu due to its higher yield, flavor and processing qualities. ARI 516 is a multi-purpose grape variety with a musky flavor and is moderately resistant to fungal diseases. Nanobioscience. The focus of research in nanobioscience has been on the development of technology in medicine, agriculture, and environment. Various aspects of study involve synthesis and characterization of nanoparticles for drug delivery, vaccine delivery, siRNA for insect control, and topical dressing for rapid hemostasis. Application of gold nanoparticles in rapid field usable diagnostics such as mycotoxin detection in food and feed, viral disease of shrimp and prawns. Harker Research Institute has been on a path that strikes a balance between fundamental and applied research. ARI has been at the forefront of contributing in the national missions like Swasth Bharat, Swachh Bharat, Make in India, Innovate in India. NACS Agharkar Research Institute will continue to serve the nation with its multidisciplinary expertise.
The Department of Science and Technology is completing 50 glorious years in the service of the nation through science and technology. This journey of relevance and excellence has not been a solitary one. All our autonomous organizations have played a critical role in driving forth with quality and focus and speed in their respective areas. They have excelled in their pursuits. I wish all the autonomous organizations and their scientists a very successful future. The future is coming at us at faster and faster speeds. I'm sure you'll be fully prepared to meet the challenges and create new opportunities and work for an Atmanirbhar Bharat that can be proud of its S&T depth and spread.
City of Pune in Maharashtra is renowned for a variety of reasons. Pune has its first science research institute in the form of Agharkar Research Institute. Maharashtra Association for the Cultivation of Science is the parent body of Agharkar Research Institute, was established in 1946.
I
Professor
request all
Shankar
of you to
Purushottam
kindly take your
Agharkar
seats. Our guests will shortly arriving. Kindly ask all other people who are standing outside to come to the auditorium. Who are standing outside, maybe you can just give a call to them on your mobile and ask them to come and take us to the auditorium. Lot of people are standing outside. Hello. Check.
Hello, check. Hello, check.
Hello. Namaskar.
Prabhat.
A very good morning and warm welcome to all the MACS members, invitees, former employees, staff and students. It's really wonderful to see you all gathered here. I, Dr. Vandana Ghormade,
And I, Dr. Chaudhary, will begin the proceedings for the Foundation Day celebrations.
I request our director, Dr. P.K. Dhakepalkar, to kindly escort the guests to the dais. Welcome, sir. Today, we have all joined together to celebrate the Founders' Day. Agarkar Research Institute was founded by the most inspiring and dynamic founder director, Professor S.P. Agarkar. His birthday on 18 November is celebrated as Foundation Day of Agarkar Research Institute. Today, we are greatly honored to be joined by distinguished personalities on the dais. I request our director, Dr. P.K. Dhakepalkar, to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Shekhar Mande, former Director General of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, with a bouquet of flowers.
Now I request Director Sir to please welcome our guest of honor for today, Dr. V. Premnath, Director, Venture Center, Pune, with a floral bouquet.
I request Director Sir to welcome President MACS Padma Vibhushan Dr. Anil Kakodkar, former Chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission of India, with flowers.
We are grateful to each one of you, sir, for accepting our invitation and becoming the honored guest for today's event. I request the dignitaries on the dais initiate today's event by offering a floral tribute to Professor Agarkar.
महेश्वरा साक्षात् परब्रह्मा महेश्वरे
Thank you very much, sir.
As an academic institute, we are heavily invested in learning and knowledge, and Invocation, the goddess of knowledge and wisdom, will set the tone for today's events. ARI students, Ms. Payal Deshpande, Ms. Tanmay Sathe, Ms. Devyani Sengar, Ms. Shubha Manvi, Ms. Mrunmayee Kulkarni will render the Saraswati Vandana. We pray to the goddess to bless us with a sharp memory, good concentration powers, and to enhance our intelligence and wisdom.
हर हर धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्कर प्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती प्रजाड्यापहा तां ब्रह्म विचारसार परमाम् आद्या जगद्व्यापिनीम् वीणापुस्तकधारिणीम् अभयदाम् ताड्यान्धकारापहाम् हस्ते स्फाटिकमालिकां विदधतीम् पद्मासने संस्थिताम् वन्दे तां परमेश्वरीं भगवतीं बुद्धिप्रदां शारदाम्
Thank you very much for the beautiful invocation to the goddess of knowledge. We move ahead to the next event, and I request our respected director, sir, kindly present him.
I welcome you all on this auspicious occasion of Founders Day celebration. We are really privileged to have esteemed guest with us, respected Professor Shekhar Mande sir, former Director General, CSIR, Secretary, DSIR, Director, NCCS, and now distinguished professor at Savitribai Phule Pune University. Dr. Premnath, who's Director of Venture Center, our own beloved Padma Vibhushan Kakodkar sir, who needs no introduction, staff and students, both past and present, invited guests, and my dear friends. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you today. The reason for that is our institute, Agharkar Research Institute, has completed 76 years of its existence. Today we will be celebrating 77th Founders Day. That is the birthday of our founder director, Professor S.P. Agharkar or Shankar Purushottam Agharkar. We are really indeed privileged that this institute is flourishing under the guidance of our life members of MSCS, office bearers of MSCS, who are all present here, and also the scientists who are contributing immensely to the growth of this particular institute. Since this institute has been in existence for 77 years or 76 years, and we have now entered into 77th years, it would be really right to take a look at what exactly led to establishment of this institute and what were the situation, what demanded the establishment of this institute. In short, what exactly is the story behind this institute that we are so proud of today? And that is something that I would like to discuss with you. The institute came into existence in 1946. Those days or early 1940s were totally a different era, I would say. The Second World War was over, Germany was defeated, the black cloud of Second World War had already blown away. The Great Britain was not so great anymore. They, it had become weakened. The Quit India movement was at its peak, and India, it was inevitable that we would be getting our freedom. But it was during this period that there were thinkers, philosophers, scientists who had started thinking about what's going to be next. As soon as we get India independent, then what exactly are we going to do to make this India Saksham Bharat or Sashakta Bharat or Balashali Bharat? Everybody knew about the proud history of India. We knew that India was one of the strongest nation, one of the richest nation, one of the most intellectual nation. But newly independent India would not be like that. We were not so healthy nation, figuratively and literally. We were a nation which was not so literate anymore, and what needed to be done. And that was the time the environment atmosphere in Pune was really charged. We are blessed to have so many philosophers like Principal Gharpure, Professor Jaikar, N.C. Kelkar, Professor Bhandarkar, Mahamohopadhyay, Dattovaman Poddar, and so on and so forth. They were all luminaries, they were all scientists who were driven by the fact that we have to make our country a very strong nation. And if at all needed to do that, then we needed to create the next generation which would be learned, which would be skilled, and which would cater to the needs of our nation, which would really do science for the society, which would make India a very powerful nation. So thinking about that, they form a committee of Professor Jaikar, Dr. Dhananjay Gadgir, and they all came together and they started thinking what exactly needed to be done. There were universities in India. The first university in India that way, since was established in 1857, but not many of them contributed significantly to creation of knowledge, barring maybe few illustrious examples, and there were only a few. So we needed to create research institute or academic institute which would cater to the need of education as well as research. And that was something that was in the mind of the committee. And that was the time when a visionary and eminent botanist, Dr. Professor Shankar Purushottam Agharkar, who had retired from University of Calcutta, who had also completed his tenure as president of ISCS, had shifted to Maharashtra, and he was thinking of starting an institution on the lines of ISCS, or Indian Association for Cultivation of Science. Now, Indian Association for Cultivation of Science had its own place in the history in Indian science. In pre-independent India, almost all those scientists who had contributed significantly in one way or other were associated with ISCS. Let it be Professor C.V. Raman, let it be Homi Bhabha for short stage, Acharya Basu, all of them, they were associated with Indian Association for Cultivation of Sciences, who were creating knowledgeable students, but who were also actively involved in research. Something on that line, Professor Agharkar had in his mind to start in Maharashtra. Now, when this idea was put before the committee, immediately Principal Gharpure offered him some space in law college. He said that you can start the institute here immediately, and that is how the concept of Maharashtra Association for Cultivation of Science was established. And this institute was established on 5th October 1946 as association in Pune. And this started in the basement of Law College. And Indian Law Society was really gracious in offering this space. And this institute was initially established as a society, later on as a trust, because if you had to carry research, you needed money, and there was no funding. Almost all the funds were invested by Professor Agharkar from his own resources and through generous donations such as Maharani of Baroda, Chimnabai Gaikwad, and likes. So, if at all it was to be done, then there had to be some aims and objectives defined, and they were at that time the promotion of science, including its practical application to the problem of national welfare, maintaining institutes for scientific research, establishing science library, and disseminating knowledge of pure and applied sciences through lectures, publications, demonstrations, exhibition, etc. In short, they were interested in science for the society. And when this institute was established, obviously, unanimously, Professor S.P. Agarkar was elected as its founder director. The great visionary, he started his work. And he was a man not only of words, but was of action. He worked in the field. He gathered along with him equally driven scientists who were ready to work without any remuneration. And these scientists included Professor N.V. Joshi, who established microbiology and biochemistry department, Professor Azrekar, who organized mycology department, Professor Deoras, who started the investigations in zoology, and Professor Agarkar himself established botany and soil science departments. This is how the institute started. Later on, Professor G.B. Devdikar, who played a very important role in this institute, also joined. He attracted many students to this institute. What was interesting to note that it was the time when not even NCL was established. We didn't even have Pune University at that time. There was a research laboratory, but that laboratory was not fully established as such. And that was the time when the concept was conceptualized by Professor Agarkar, and he started working towards it. They carried out some work together with Professor Principal Gharpure and Professor Jaikar, and Pune University was established in 1948. And as a part of this Pune University, the Agarkar Research Institute was granted recognition in the field of botany, cytogenetics, plant breeding, entomology, zoology, mycology, microbiology, chemistry, and agricultural chemistry. And this was how the institute started. Obviously, we needed students when they came to know that there were scientists and researchers who were working, who were actually working with their hands, who were soiling their shoes and clothes by doing the field work. They were all attracted, and that is how the institute started flourishing. Later on, 1960, on 2nd of September, Professor S.P. Agarkar, he passed away. Now, when he passed away, his wife, she donated whatever belongings they had to the institute, and that is how the sacrifice of the family who rose above the normals, they actually resulted in growth of this particular institute. The At that time, the executive committee chairman, Dr. Raghunath Paranspe, he appointed Dr. G.B. Devdikar as a director, and he again gave a lot of directions. He was one of the main scientists who was involved in establishing the plant breeding program at Agarkar Research Institute. Later on, the ministry, later on, the things started changing. Indian Law Society was growing. They required more space. Obviously, they needed space, so Agarkar Research Institute had to make the space available. For some time, Gokhale Institute had offered the place, but that was something which was not really good for the research institute. And obviously, Professor Devdikar and others, they approached then Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Shri Y.B. Chauhan, Yashwantrao Chauhan, who graciously offered us this particular land, approximately of 5 acres of land to the institute. And that is how this land was given to MSCS, the Maharashtra Association for Cultivation of Science, and also an ad hoc grant of 6 lakhs rupees was given to build the research institute. And that is how this beautiful building of Agarkar Research Institute was constructed in 1960s. And that was just the beginning. Then, looking at whatever efforts were taken, Ministry of Education undertook this particular institute under its aegis. And 1972, when the Department of Science and Technology was already established in 1966, in 1972, Agarkar Research Institute was one of the first autonomous institute which was adopted by Department of Science and Technology. And after that, Agarkar Research Institute started working. Just to give you an idea, this was the expenditure or budget in early days of Agarkar Research Institute. You will see that 18,000, 9,000, 13,000, 12,000. This is a meager amount. But we have to understand that in those days, this was a huge amount, considering the fact that almost everything was coming from the pocket of SP Agarkar sir. And that speaks volume how he single-handedly drove this institute and research at this particular institute. Later on, as Ministry of Education undertook this institute and started giving them grant, the funding research grants started increasing, and later on 1972 onwards, then Department of Science and Technology, they started giving us funding and we started growing. Initially there were programs, then there were departments, and soon we had botany, chemistry, genetics and plant breeding, geology, microbiology, zoology, quantitative biology, which later on became biometry and nutrition department, as well as then certain other auxiliary departments such as library, administration unit, instrumentation units, etc. All these departments, where they came into existence. This is how institute was growing. We have continued this growth. We have continued this theme. What is our theme? Theme is science for society. And keeping that in mind, we have organized our research program. We have organized our research program on 6 thematic areas, which include biodiversity and paleobiology, bioenergy, bioprospecting, developmental biology, genetics and plant breeding, and nanobiosciences. Why we chose this? There was a history behind that. There is an integral connect in all these programs. Professor Agharkar, he was a great observationist. He was also a great morphologist. What he did was something interesting. He was botanist by training, but when he was visiting River Ganges, he saw a jellyfish in the fresh water of River Ganges. Now that was something which was really very extraordinary, because in those days there was a strong belief that jellyfish is found only in marine environment. Now this is something, a freshwater jellyfish, morphologically different, probably a new species. He investigated it. Not only he investigated it, this was such an important finding that it got published in Nature. Now that was something which is very important. So we have picked up this. He was interested in biodiversity. Our institute has continued our work in the area of biodiversity. And it is just not the textbook kind of research. We do biodiversity with purpose. We knew that India was a very strong nation historically. Why? Because we were blessed with tremendous natural resources. Unfortunately, these natural resources were plundered by the Western countries. Why? Because we did not believe in documentation. Many of the things which were known to us were not properly documented. And as a result, you would see that many of the Western countries took patents on the products which were known here for ages together, and we were prevented from using those products. So obviously, that is something that we don't want, we don't accept, and we have to start documenting. So the biodiversity research in our institute is driven by the purpose that we want to catalog especially any new plant varieties, any microbial varieties, any varieties of fungi, lichens, etc. If there is a new species, we want to document it. And when we are documenting, obviously it is not possible for us to cover the entire nation, but we have identified the biodiversity hotspot of Western Ghats and Northeastern Himalaya. And in that, we have been carrying out our investigation to report new species, to catalog the diversity associated with these biodiversity hotspots. Not only that, during this investigation, if at all we find that there are certain species which are endangered species, obviously our scientists take efforts to come up with something that can conserve these endangered species. So this is the one such example, which is of Ceropegia, which is very difficult, which was endangered, medicinally an important plant. Our scientists have taken efforts to come up with tissue culture technique to cultivate them on mass, to replicate them in the laboratory, and then later on reintroduce them in the field as such, to again conserve them. There are certain other examples of orchids and several other plants, but this is just one such example. And we don't restrict ourselves to conservation of only endangered species. If at all there are certain habitats, then those habitats also reconstructed, conserved, and that is how we have been doing that. While doing such investigation, we generate a lot of knowledge. We don't want to restrict that knowledge. We want to keep that knowledge available to everyone. And that is how we have created a database of medicinally important plant. This particular investigation was supported by RGSTC, and where this particular database of medicinal plant is being accessed and used by several industries, especially in the field of herbal medicines. We also offer drug authentication services because we have the reference material, which very few other institutes have it. So any industry, when they are coming out with the herbal products, if at all they want to authenticate their drugs, they approach us, and we have a very well established laboratory and procedure by which we do that. There are certain bioactive molecules which are being investigated and which are being used for the purpose of finding treatments against diseases, especially the non-communicable diseases. And of course, the flora, whatever we are gathering information on, is documented in the form of various books, published articles, and everything. So that is how we are driven with a purpose to carry out research. It is not only restricted to, I would say, microorganisms and plant. We take natural resources very seriously, and these natural resources are to be cultivated. One such natural resources is so many varieties of crop that we have. For example, wheat and soybean. So our scientists who are very great experts in plant breeding, they have adopted the conventional crossbreeding techniques to come up with newer varieties. Why newer varieties? Because these newer varieties are having some interesting characteristics. They are more productive, they are resistant to diseases, they are tolerant to the stress, both biotic as well as abiotic stress. And many of these varieties are also biofortified varieties. So far, our institute has come up with 12 such varieties of wheat, 11 varieties of soybean, which have been released, which have been used for various applications, which are used for peninsular India, central India, and certain other basins. What is very interesting about many of these varieties, or some of these varieties, are they are biofortified varieties where they provide the trace element which is required by children, especially in the form of zinc, iron, protein content, etc. And these varieties are available. And these varieties, we also have certain other varieties. You want to make pasta, we have certain variety. Puran puri, we have a special variety. Bread making, we have certain varieties. So there are different varieties which have been developed by our scientists and which have become very popular. Some of these varieties, especially biofortified varieties, last year were released and mentioned by Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji in his when he released certain varieties, biofortified varieties. Our scientists have also been actively involved in interacting with the farmers. They have developed and written certain books, certain leaflets, which actually talk about very interesting practices which one needs to adopt in the field. And why these practices are needed to be adopted in the field is because they can improve your yield, especially when the irrigation is not easily available. Our agricultural system, even today, is based on rain-fed agricultural system. The vagaries of nature can really be very detrimental to the agricultural practices. But our scientists have come up with certain varieties and certain practices which they talk to the farmers, which they cater to the need of the farmer, they educate them, and you would see that with a minimal investment, they are getting rich or reaping richer benefits, which are really in the interest of the farmers. And some of such examples I have listed here, where in field we are getting 15% and 30% incremental yield over what the farmers were getting. Not only that, whenever we have introduced high productive varieties, we claim that around 12 per quintal or 10 quintals of yield you would be getting per acres. But this is something which our scientists believe in underestimating themselves. Farmers who have used our varieties and practices in the field have gone up to 16 quintals of the yield, and which has been really appreciated by government of Maharashtra, and such efforts were felicitated by Honorable Chief Minister of Maharashtra. So when we get this, we also have all inclusive, approach. So now you have the agriculture, and agriculture after harvesting grains, it also generates certain residue. What do you do with residues? We hear that farmers, they tend to burn these residues, which would result in some kind of pollution. Our scientists do not believe in that. We believe that this particular agricultural waste or residue that is generated can be used. There is lot of energy there, and that energy needs to be extracted. So our scientists have developed a kind of biorefinery approach. And you would see that in this particular approach, what our scientists are doing. We have the agricultural residues. These agricultural residues, we use certain microorganisms which would degrade these agricultural residues very efficiently without any thermochemical pretreatment, convert it into something like ethanol or hydrogen or methane. Each of them will act in its own capacity as a biofuel, and it can be used as an alternative to conventional fossil fuel. It will reduce pollution, it would extract energy, and which can be a sustainable energy. We are very proud to say that for energy, the technology that we had established here for the production of hydrogen has been adopted by KPIT Technologies Limited, while the technology for methane production without any thermochemical pretreatment will be adopted by GPS Renewables. And today only we will be signing an agreement with GPS Renewable in the afternoon for commercialization of this particular process. Whatever product that comes out of such digestion, there is a slurry. We use that slurry and we can convert it into compost or organic manure, and people can use it. There is a liquid digest which comes, we can, or gas that comes out. CO2 that can be used by algae, and these algae can be grown and they can be used either as a source of lipids to perform a biodiesel, or this CO2 can also be used for their cultivation as a single cell protein. Methane, which is grown, we can reform it into hydrogen, use it. We can convert it into bio-CNG and use it. We can convert it into electricity and use it, or we can valorize by converting it into some of the value-added products such as methanol or pigment or single cell proteins using methanotropes, and that also can be using. So the moral of the story is our scientists believe in creating a complete story and cater to the need of environment and society, come up with the methods which will abate pollution, facilitate energy recovery, and contribute to the growth of our nation. We also have another department. Time is changing. There are newer areas of research which are coming up. Newer tools are becoming available. So our scientists are also adopting. Nanobiosciences is one such technology or one such field which has been adopted by our scientists. And our scientists have come up with rapid diagnostic tools in the form of lateral flow assay, or they can be used for diagnosis of some of the viral pathogen. They can be also used for detection of ochratoxin. Now, ochratoxin is another interesting one. Whenever you have to export any of the commodities, that commodity should be certified to be free from ochratoxin when or aflatoxins. Now, when you have such kind of spices or commodities which are to be exported, and when aflatoxin is to be estimated, you have to resort to techniques such as ICP-MS or LCMS, which are very expensive technique. Our scientists have come up with the process by which you can detect it by simply dot blot assay or lateral flow assay in very minute quantities, and it can be done even at the point of use, and that is something which is really beautiful about this particular research. Also, another research is the practice that developed by our scientists to synthesize quantum dots in the laboratory, which can be used as a substitute to expensive chromophores, which are used in some of the state of the art techniques, or in situ hybridizations, or for such kind of labeling assays in the research. And these quantum dots could be effective. Similarly, siRNA are being used as nanomedicine. I will not go into details of each of them, but that is something which indicates the changing times at Agarkar Research Institute. It's not that we are working only in the applied research. There are certain basic research that we have to always not neglect, but we should always address to. And we have a group of brilliant scientists in developmental biology group who are involved in using animal models to answer some of the questions. One of such examples I will just pick up very quickly is the work on zebrafish, where one of our scientists has been working on heart regeneration as well as regeneration of the cartilaginous material. What he has found out is there is a protein which is CCN2 protein which can recover the muscles which are injured following heart attack. Now, these particular muscles usually will mean that that particular part of the heart is dead and the heart will not be functioning, its efficiency will be reduced. But after regeneration of such tissues, the heart can recover its ability to work like a normal one. And the CCN2 protein has shown in zebrafish model that it can be very effectively used for such particular purpose. In zebra, it has an analog in humans. Can we use it? Only time will tell. But what is important to note here is there are several other aspects of developmental biology with respect to reproduction and others, and that is something that is being addressed very aptly by our scientists in developmental biology group. So all in all, when I'm standing here on this particular occasion, I have to take stock of how exactly our institute is performing. And we can always talk about several contributions, and it's very difficult to review and cite all the contribution made by all the scientists. But I would say that we are a very small institute, but we have been making some impact. So I would just enlist our achievement in the form that is considered as a deliverables. Our scientists have been publishing papers in journals of high international repute, and this is something which is a certification of their research by the peers in the field. They have been filing patents, they have been getting patents, which is again a very good indication that whatever intellectual property generated is not remaining in the book, but it is being protected. The technologies are transferred to the industries. That means whatever research is generated in the laboratory is translated in the field. We are releasing improved crop varieties, state-of-the-art infrastructure is being established. We are disseminating knowledge to the society. And whenever there is any challenge or calamity faced by our nation, we are always rising to the challenge. And contribution to our fight against COVID-19, where we contributed to the testing, we contributed to the awareness, we contributed even to the origin of the COVID-19 virus, where Dr. Rahalkar has been quite frequently figuring on televisions and newspaper. So that is something that we have been doing every now and then. We have published 77 papers in last year. Book chapters are there. But what I would like to specially mention here is achievements and recognition that our scientists have been getting. One of our scientists, Dr. Virendra Gajpie, has for the second year in row been identified among the top 2% of the scientists in the world by Stanford University. And that, I believe, is something that speaks volume about the quality of the research which is done. Even at very young age, whatever achievements that have been done by some of our scientists in biodiversity department, Dr. Karthik Balasubramaniam and Dr. Ritesh Kumar Chaudhary has already been recognized. They are relatively very early in their career, but at such young age, their recognition, their contribution is recognized by national academies and foundations, and that is something which is very important. And very fondly, I must mention here about about Snehal Jamalpure. She is yet to become doctor, I guess. But Snehal Jamalpure is our student. We have been inculcating the entrepreneurial culture amongst our students. We want to give them training. We want to encourage them to take research from the laboratory to the field, be employer rather than being employee. So that is something that we want them to do. So we are always encouraging our student. What is important is student grasps something and they always surprise us how exceedingly they do well. And Snehal Jamalpure, she had also contributed in the National Bioentrepreneurship Championship competition, which was held in Bangalore, and she won the first prize there, and it was worth 1 lakh rupees, and also some grant and further pathway for commercialization of her technology. That is something that we believe is a very significant achievement by our students. Of course, it is not restricted to this. There are other students who have been doing exceedingly well. DST Avsar Award was won by our students, and there were several other awards and winners. What is important is we are creating knowledge base, we are creating human resources. There are 11 students who have already obtained their PhDs. Whatever technologies we are developing in the lab, we are again translating them in the field. We have been working not only with KPIT Limited or GPS Renewable, but we are also working with ONGC, and ONGC has recently signed an agreement with us to come up with a process which is actually we already have proof of concept, but translate that process into commercially viable technology. And we have signed an agreement with ONGC for mitigation of microbial induced corrosion caused by sulfate reducing bacteria. And there are several other MOUs that we have been signing. Not only that, we have created certain repositories. These repositories in the form of National Fungal Culture Collection, Agarkar Herbarium, Mycological Herbarium, so on and so forth. These repositories are serving as a resource for academicians, for students, as well as for industries. We have a great variety of reference material which are being used by people all across the country and even from abroad. They are visiting our facilities and they are using our repositories. In addition to that, we are actively involved in the infrastructure development. Gone are the days when we used to work in a small laboratory and with a relatively primitive microscope. These days, students, they work like this. I really hope that they are doing fantastic research and making the best possible use of the facilities. Just in last 1 year, we came up with some more modernization of our infrastructure, which I'm sure is going to benefit our research. It's going to improve further the quality of research being carried out at our institute. Whatever infrastructure, facilities, services, expertise we are always making it available for the use of society, and it is being extensively used by society, both academia, industries, colleges, students, professionals, everybody. It is open for everyone at nominal charges and they are being used, and this is just a list of this. So all in all, I would just take a look at glance of last 1 year. We are 30 scientists. We have 66 extramural sponsored projects. We have received the DST grant of 39 crores for the last year, which is now increased to 48 crores, which is approved grant. We have 77 publications in SCI journals, 6 patent files, 2 patent granted, 2 technologies transferred and licensed, and one more I hope will be done today in the afternoon. And there are 11 PhD students, and we have done a significant sample testing for COVID lab. This is all possible only because of the scientists and students who have been working tirelessly in our institute. It is also possible only because of the generous support that we have been getting from Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and we are eternally indebted to them. And not only to DST, but also to ICR, ACRB, DBT, ONGC, KPIT, HTBL, GPS, renewables, and so on and so forth. There are several others who have been giving generous support to us. I must also make special mention of the guidance that we have been receiving from the Institute Council as well as governing body of Agarkar Research Institute. And without their guidance, it would not be possible to reach where we have reached today. I must acknowledge the efforts of my fellow scientists, staff, students of our institute. They have been efficient, diligent, cooperative, and with the help of their support, we look forward to continuing to serve the nation, collaborating with industry and academia, and working for the benefit of society. I thank you all for patient hearing. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you very much, Director Sir, for giving us a historical perspective of ARI and detailing the scientific achievements here. We are now eagerly looking forward to the next event in our program, which is the oration by the guest of honor, Dr. V. Premnath. I request Dr. Ritesh Chaudhary introduce Dr. V. Premnath to the audience.
Dr. Venu Gopalan Premnath is our distinguished guest of honor today, and I'm privileged to introduce him. However, considering his multi-talented personality and manifold achievements, I'm slightly puzzled about whether to introduce him as a scientist, technologist, inventor, innovation manager, or entrepreneur. He's one of the torchbearers who provided leadership to India's leading innovation management group at CSIR NCL Pune. Our guest of honor is an accomplished IITian who earned his PhD from MIT Cambridge and is presently heading the NCL Innovations, NCL Intellectual Property Group, and working as the director of the Venture Center, which is India's largest science business incubator. He has contributed significantly to technology development and commercialization. He has been the inventor and technology developer for the joint replacement materials and the porous polyethylene implants that Zimmer Biomet and Biosphere Surgicals are now producing. His current research interest lies in biomed product development and developing a novel security document technology. Please join me in welcoming our guest of honor, Dr. Premnath.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I really thank Dr. Kakodkar for inviting me and also for the summary, the historical background of Agarkar Research Institute. I'm really proud to visit this place every time I come. This whole road is, quite an inspiration, a place where pioneers worked, people who were on a mission. So, in brief, on the occasion of Professor Agarkar's birthday, I can only wish for all of you that each of you find your mission in life and drive it as a mission rather than look at it as a job, right? So, with that, let me get started. Today's topic I've chosen to speak on is creating impact with science. I run an incubator, but I also have been trying to build routes to market for NCL. So I'll reflect a little bit on that, and also I'm proud to have mentored and hosted some ARI alumni startups. So I want to speak especially to the students, and hopefully some of you who would be interested in trying to create impact with the science that you are doing today. I'm also going to try and speak a little bit about bioresources and how to valorize it, but that's at the end. I hope I can get that far. Please alert me when I run out of time. Okay, a little bit about nomenclature. When we talk about impact, I think there are many ways to impact and there are many routes to market. Of course, some of the themes that you might want to think about, especially for the students, is of course we talk a lot about usefulness and value creation, but you also need to think about scale and reach and the self-replicating nature of that activity that you're carrying out. There's also this issue of urgency versus sustained contributions over a period of time, how it creates lasting impact over a period of time. The reason I'm bringing it out is because, as somebody I know once said, that the real task or the real challenge in science is actually to identify the right problems. It's not just solving them, right? And that is something we don't learn much about, and it's something which we want to probably do as students as well. The contextual relevance, contemporaneous, uniqueness, and importance of each of these things that we do are quite important. Today, what is important may not be as important tomorrow, but more importantly, as I will tell you, many startups are about foresight. It's about what will be important tomorrow, right? So we need to look a little ahead into the future when we are thinking about some of these, the impact that we wish to create, and not necessarily look at immediate requirements or urgencies, but into the future and build those out as well. So just a few more terminologies. Innovation, there are three important things that I want to tell you about. Many of you are very familiar with the process of knowledge creation, of discovery. Innovation, on the other hand, focuses on problem solving. It's always there's a problem and you find a solution for it, right? It's novel and therefore it's called an innovation, but it's not yet an innovation until it has hit the market, right? There are many inventions which never hit the market and they don't necessarily qualify as innovations. You remember those which have hit the market. So Schumpeter, who was a famous economist, had this definition, and these are the key elements of it: market introduction, novelty, and problem solving, right? And many of us are excited by this idea of problem solving as well. Another common terminology you will listen to is business, right? And in this place where we invoked Goddess Saraswati, I have to talk about Lakshmi as well today. As far as business is concerned, interestingly, all businesses solve problems. Small or big, there's a need that you have and they provide a solution, okay? And one other additional step that we take in business is that there is a customer who values that solution and is therefore willing to pay for it, and therefore you have a revenue model around that solution, right? So that is usually the case for all businesses that we see, and eventually it has to cover its cost, and there has to be a model where you earn more than what you spend. So that's broadly what a business is. Now, there is a class of businesses called startups, and these are actually very important and exciting category of businesses. And it's, of course, right now the flavor of the season. But when we started Venture Center 2015, 2007, we were there were a lot of naysayers telling us that science-based startups won't fly in India. Well, that we have shown that it is not true. It's a very important category of business because if you're a country aiming to leapfrog or pole vault ahead, as Dr. Mashelkar says, I don't think there's any other way to do it, okay? You will notice that if you look at the S&P 500 stock market exchanges, you'll see that the companies which are there today were 20 years before or 30 years before startups, right? So those are the companies that are disrupting your economy. Those are the countries that, those are the companies that are going to actually change how business is run, how the world changes. A recent example is Moderna, right? A upcoming pharma company which is going to disrupt a lot of activities. Startups, you will find, are interesting to many scientists as well because they look at future opportunities, not today's opportunities. They're looking at future opportunities. So when somebody says that tomorrow nobody will need to own a car, they're speculating something about the future opportunity. So Uber believes that you will not need to own a car. Everybody will be able to just hire a car. Actually, it makes sense because most of the time your car is standing parked somewhere, right? It's not being utilized. So your capital expenditure is actually getting wasted all the time. Of course, there's a different matter. You have a sense of prestige about it, but but the truth is that that is a possibility, right? And when you look at future opportunities, there are uncertainties associated with it. And with those uncertainties come the need for innovation. You need to come up with new solutions and new ways to look at the problem, and therefore come up with new ways to solve it and create value for society with it. Invariably, it involves systematic de-risking, something that all of us as scientists are very familiar with. We systematically de-risk ideas, right? And that is also goes along well with us. It also rapidly scales, it grows very rapidly. And that is why it attracts risk capital. So when you hear in the news of companies raising a lot of money, that's because it is meant to scale very rapidly. And that's the kind of money that's chasing those opportunities is very different from your investment in an FD and so on and so forth, right? Now, science-based startups are a separate category there. And science-based startups are inspired by developments in science and technology, especially the problem definition that you come up with, right? And also the solutions that you come up with. And I'll give you some examples of it. And the way you de-risk it is a lot of science as well, right? If you think of a drug, you have to systematically de-risk it if you want to take it to the market as well. And that poses different challenges in terms of how you resource it, how you take it progressively to the market as well. And why are we doing all this, right? At the end of the day, all your science, whatever that you are doing today, whether it's funded by grants or whether it's funded by the industry, at the end of the day, owes its existence to profits. Okay? Whether you like it or not, right? Your taxes also come from profits. Your charitable donations also come from profits. So unabashedly, we should admit that if you don't have business, you will not have science flourishing over a period of time. Okay? It's true that people dedicate their lives to science without necessarily looking at the monetary returns. That's very true, but you need money to fuel it. Agarkar Research Institute has also received donations from various sources, and most probably, for example, the Maharaja of Baroda, right, you said, probably received some of that money through taxes which accrued from profits as well. Okay, so let's face it, let's accept it, let's build on it, right? And let's build those entities which will continuously fuel new ideas and take it to market, rather than necessarily being parasitic on the system as far as we're concerned. So just a quick story. I hope I have some time for it. This was a very nice article that came in Nature on the mRNA vaccine story in about September 2021. Youngsters would want to read it. Okay, it's a great example of how science and technology progresses. You will find here that first lesson is that science never operates in silos, right? There were technology developments happening in the mRNA field. There were technology developments happening in the lipid nanoparticles field parallelly for many years. And sometimes they don't happen in synchrony. They happen in different stretches of time. And they will develop at their own pace, but there are pioneers who see the opportunity well in advance. They can see it coming, right? And there are other pioneers who can connect the dots, who know that you need to connect the two to create value, right? And that's what happened here as well. in the work has been going on since 1960. Some of the early work in lipid nanoparticles was there in 1970s as well. But it was around 2005 that this path-breaking effort to basically modify uh, mRNA to be non-immunogenic was made, right? And people were waiting for that to happen, right? And you can see parallelly on the other side, the first startups coming up. CureVac being formed, Moderna being formed, BioNTech being formed. COVID was nowhere in the picture, right? So it was not that they were waiting for COVID to happen. They were looking for opportunities. They understood that mRNA had a future. Imagine this, today you make all your biotherapeutics in a reactor and supply it in a vial, right? Imagine if all those biotherapeutics were made inside your body by your own body. That is the foresight I'm talking about, right? It's the same as nobody wanting to own a car one day, right? And you can imagine the disruption it will cause for your biotechnology industry, right? That is the vision that one is talking about out here. And you can see pioneers finding opportunities for value in all of this process as well, right? And it takes many players to make it happen. And it is not where only one person working in silo makes it happen. And you need to celebrate different capabilities, different people with different backgrounds. These two people were responsible for that mRNA work, Weizmann and Carrico. And Carrico, by the way, works for BioNTech today, heads R&D, right? And they have won several awards. I wouldn't be surprised in the future, there's probably a Nobel Prize waiting for them at some point. These are the scientists who made it happen. But they wouldn't have reached anywhere if there weren't other people who were business people who were pushing the story, right? And this is a very lonely journey, a tough journey. For example, this is the CureVac founder being told by Nobel laureates that all the work that they're doing on mRNA is completely shit. This is from Nature, by the way. Okay, I'm quoting you from there, right? That it is not going to happen. And these two people are the founders of BioNTech. If they had not taken it that far, you wouldn't have had the Pfizer vaccine. And if that wasn't there, Carrico and Weizmann would not have probably been considered for the Nobel Prize. Okay? So it's not about one person doing it, right? It's about everybody working together to make a possible vision happen as well. So today you have the mRNA vaccines, and it's a great story. You can see that happen. You can see the impact of it. But there's a long history behind it, and it's worth thinking about it in terms of how people create value out of science process. A quick few slides. During COVID, one of the lessons we learned was that startups are a very important piece of reacting quickly to any emergencies, right? Globally, we saw Moderna, BioNTech, both are startups, by the way. You may not know that Merck's molnupiravir was back-ended by Ridgeback Therapeutics, which is also a startup, okay, from Emory University, right? In India as well, you saw all these startups, right? It's surprising that my lab beat Abbott and Roche to an approval for diagnostics, right? In March and April of 2020, right? Fantastic, right? And that's the kind of stuff that these startups can do. We saw Mr. Modi wearing the Swasa mask. So many of our startups as well, for example, the medical refrigerator you see there, carrying for the last mile delivery of vaccines, the defibrillator here. This is another Pune startup connected to the IIT Kanpur network, which is Noka Robotics, Pune-based startup for ventilators. Fantastic work during COVID as well. And of course, I must mention here our Agarkar Research Institute startups as well. So we're very happy to have startups who have actually made an effort to try and create value out of the science that they are doing as well. We Innovate Biosolutions is founded by 3 alumni from Agarkar Research Institute. Many of you know them. We are very proud that they have been able to raise venture capital money and try and build their company as they go ahead. Another company called Intignus, again founded by alumnus of Agarkar Research Institute, is working on preeclampsia, early diagnostics of preeclampsia. Very important problem, and hopefully the very near future you'll hear some good news from them as well. So last segment, I just want to take a few minutes on impact with bioresources. In bioresources, also, there are a lot of opportunities which are knocking the door, and some of you might want to look at some of these things. There are many different markets that one can think of where you can leverage bioresources. And there are many different starting materials that people are looking at. Of course, you are masters of many of these. I don't need to spend much time on that. And there are different ecosystems that one is leveraging here as well. But one thing to keep in mind is that in business, and especially what are called social enterprises, there are very often two y-axes that you need to look at. In this graph, the x-axis is time and the y-axis is money, right? And you invest some efforts into it and hopefully get some rewards, and those rewards have to exceed your costs, right? By the way, this happens in every field of life. Even your PhD, as a PhD student, you're investing some time, you are expecting some rewards later, right? So that's the same story here. But in social enterprises, and especially those where you're leveraging natural resources, looking at problems in environment and so on and so forth, there's a second y-axis, but it is the second y-axis, not the first. The first is always money because it has to be financially sustainable. Second has to do with impact, okay? And you have to tell the impact story well. In the sense, you have to explain how it's going to create impact. If you don't do that well, the company doesn't fly, okay? So this is an extra challenge for people who work in the area of bioresource value addition, of people who work in problems relating to the environment, people who want to have social impact, companies which will create value in society while also creating value commercially, right? And you cannot do it unsustainably. You have to be sustainable nonetheless. There are many, I don't have time for this, but the one point I want to leave you behind is this whole idea that when you talk about some of these technologies, you want to think about what you're proposing. Are you proposing a painkiller or a vitamin, right? If it's a painkiller, you have a headache, you'll go and buy a medicine and solve it immediately, right? If it's a vitamin and your doctor advises you, you might take 3 months to decide to buy the vitamin and use it, right? Now, this is a common problem that you often see with enterprises which have impact as an axis as well, okay? And you need to solve that. And there are ways to convert vitamins to painkillers. And that is a longer discussion, which I will keep for another day as well. There are large opportunities emerging in this space. And examples, for example, Raj today is a 1,000 crore plus company. Or Impossible Burger, for example, Impossible Foods, is an emerging company which has raised a lot of venture capital money and promises to change how people, consume food and what kind of food they consume and what's the carbon impact of those foods as well. And there are a lot of synthetic biology companies today in different domains which are doing very well and have a lot of opportunity. By the way, one of them here is Moderna on the left in healthcare, but nonetheless, there are many that are coming up as well. So just a couple of quick examples. You don't need to be necessarily in a very rich ecosystem to do it. You can do it in many different ecosystems. Here is one strategy. For example, in the Northeast, you have a lot of bioresources. So do you have here? We have it in the Western Ghats. How do we create value out of it, right? In fact, the idea is to leverage those for global products, products which can tap global markets. And there are many different ways one has done it. One example is wood bark to perfume, highest value perfumes, or biomass to specialty inks. For example, tung oil used in the Northeast is used for specialty inks and creates a lot of value. In fact, in your currency notes, it's used, okay, the Indian currency notes, right? Here is a startup out of Guwahati related to us, which works on one of the most expensive perfumes, which is agarwood oil, right? And uses bioresources to actually create more out of it than what is normally available to the farmers. The Swedish model is another example. Small country, very little number of people, small internal market, but how do they create those companies which sort of seem to be global, like Spotify, for example, right? And so on, that you often hear about. It's a good lesson to learn. There's lessons to be learned from there. Another example here I want to show you is oats. There's a company called Oatly. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Oatly. It just is oat milk, by the way. And I don't see why we can't do it as Indians. And in last year, Oatly, was valued at about $10 billion in the US stock market. Now, it is a matter of creating products which people want, positioning it right, taking it to the market in the right way, and it's very possible. It's not about just pumping in lots of resources. It's about ideas and foresight. And I think we as scientists are very much capable of doing that. Foresight should be our forte, right? There are several startups from Venture Center in the natural bioresources space, and many of you might want to build more. We're happy to help if you're interested. And just to give you glimpses before I close, this is a company by two young UDCT alumni, which is called KB Calls, which is into microbial colors, right? And it was really nice to see when, of course, they've gone through a few phases, raised money from venture capital firms. And this is this year's Lakme fashion show, by the way, featuring their clothes, right? Of course, we were very excited to see it there. And these clothes that you see and the colors that you see here are all microbial, right? Of course, it takes a lot of effort to go from those petri dishes with colors to this, right? But this is what makes it exciting, right? It's exciting as scientists to see this happen at the end of the day, right? Okay. This is a company which works on a water treatment, and with a lot of consortiums of bacteria and so on. They have just now opened on 2nd October a very nice facility in the Savli Biotech Park in Baroda, right? And we're happy to see that it's a woman entrepreneur who has taken it on, built it out, and it's a great company that, that we hope will do very well in the future. Nobel Exchange runs a very large 300 plus tons per day biogas, bio-CNG plant in Talegaon. And they have closed the loop between PMC's waste to that plant, to selling it to IOCL, and IOCL sells it to the Pune municipal buses, right, as bio-CNG. Now, they were the original inspiration for the Satat program, because this is very difficult territory working with the municipal corporations, as I think others will also tell you. This is a company which works with silk-based biomaterials, right, and working on tissue regeneration products. I can see that some of you are working on regenerative products and so on and so forth. It's nice to see that there is now a facility in the Parvati Industrial Estate, which actually produces these products, and some of these are in the market as well. After a long round of going through animal studies, clinical trials, and so on and so forth. It takes a lot of effort to do this, but it's good to see finally products hitting the market. This is another interesting case where we are looking at seaweeds into packaging products, which today Nestle is trying to use for its own applications. And close the loop, because seaweeds are one of the largest consumers of carbon dioxide in the ecosystem. So can you close that loop? Can you do it in a commercially attractive way? And can you meet all the targets that a commercial producer wants to meet? Here's another one which looks at agro waste and converts it into value-added products. The thesis is that if you pay farmers well enough for their agro waste, they will not burn it, because burning just costs a matchbox, right? Instead, they would collect it and hopefully allow processing of it. So the number we are working with is maybe about 2,000 or plus rupees a ton. And that means that we have to look at high value products, which is boards, packaging, advanced packaging, and so on and so forth for this. Here is a company which is looking at ingredients, protein ingredients from agro sources, a variety of different ones. These guys are collaborating with DSM, which is an international company, to try and take some of these products to market. Bioprime is another Pune story. 3 PhD students from Pune University who have set up this company, and it's the most prominent agrobiologics company today in the startup space in India and is likely to do very well. Just recently, they announced another fundraise from a large venture capital firm as well. So these kind of things are possible from, I could see from Dr. Dakifalkar's presentation that there's so many interesting areas that you're working on where one could look at this. So I'll finally close with a few points for students especially. It's important to be sort of dissatisfied in life if you want to identify problems. It's a little opposite to what Indian culture probably teaches you, but be dissatisfied, seek out problems. And if you want to seek satisfaction, seek them in problem solving. Okay? Of course, some of you might find it in other things, but that's one possible way to go about it. Invent new technologies. I think it's important to invent. We need to build that culture back, bring the culture of inventing new technologies and solve problems. Somewhere in the, we lost it in between. There's an era when we had it, we lost it in between, and now I think it's a time to really get back to it as well. And finally, it's important to do meaningful work which creates value for society. I think, from my perspective and my orientation, this is the message that I want to leave you all with. And I hope if you need help, please reach out to us. We are in Pune and we are happy to help as well. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Very much to Premnath for inspiring and motivating the students and scientists at ARI. I now request it. थैंक यू वेरी मच सर। कार्यक्रम के अगले चरण में संस्था के त्रैमासिक हिंदी पत्रिका और ARI द्वारा प्रकाशित हिंदी में वैज्ञानिक पुस्तक का विमोचन है, जिसके बारे में हमें डॉक्टर रितेश चौधरी अवगत कराएंगे।
धन्यवाद। जैसा कि हम सबों को ज्ञात है, वर्ष 1949 में हिंदी को राजभाषा का दर्जा प्रदान किया गया और राजभाषा विभाग को यह दायित्व सौंपा गया कि सभी केंद्र सरकार के कार्यालयों एवं मंत्रालयों में अधिक से अधिक कार्य हिंदी में किया जाना सुनिश्चित किया जाए। आघरकर अनुसंधान संस्थान राजभाषा के प्रचार एवं प्रसार हेतु प्रयासरत है तथा मुझे आपको यह बताते हुए खुशी हो रही है कि इस दिशा में महत्वपूर्ण कार्य हेतु हमें मंत्रालय से पिछले दिनों काफी सराहना भी मिली है। संस्कृति आघरकर अनुसंधान संस्थान द्वारा प्रकाशित एक त्रैमासिक पत्रिका है जो निदेशक महोदय के मार्गदर्शन एवं डॉक्टर संजय कुमार सिंह जी के संपादन में प्रकाशित की जाती है। इस पत्रिका का उद्देश्य संस्थान के वैज्ञानिक समुदाय के द्वारा राजभाषा हिंदी का प्रचार प्रसार तथा प्रोत्साहन करना है तथा साथ ही संस्थान में चल रहे शोध कार्यों को जनमानस तक आसान रूप में पहुंचाना है। इसके साथ ही हमारे संस्थान के वैज्ञानिक डॉक्टर भारती शर्मा एवं उनकी टीम ने जैव विविधता के लिए मशहूर क्षेत्र महाबलेश्वर में पाए जाने वाले शैकों अथवा लाइकेन के ऊपर एक पुस्तक राजभाषा हिंदी में तैयार की है, जिससे यहाँ के लोगों में इस महत्वपूर्ण जैव रूपों के बारे में अधिकतम जानकारी का प्रसार हो। इतना ही नहीं, हमारे वैज्ञानिकों डॉक्टर सुजाता तेताली और उनकी टीम ने गेहूं, सोयाबीन एवं अंगूर की उन्नत प्रजातियों के विकास, उनकी खेती एवं उनके रोग प्रबंधन हेतु उन्नत तकनीकें विकसित की हैं, जो आपके समक्ष प्रस्तुत हैं। यह अत्यंत हर्ष का विषय है कि इन महत्वपूर्ण प्रकाशनों का विमोचन हम आज के शुभ दिन पर कर रहे हैं और इस हेतु हमारे बीच कई प्रख्यात माननीय अतिथि विराजमान हैं। मैं सभी माननीय अतिथियों एवं निदेशक महोदय से आग्रह करूंगा कि अपने शुभ हस्तों से इन पत्रिकाओं का विमोचन करें। सभी मान्यवरों को धन्यवाद।
After retirement, our scientists are actively participating in research. One such publication is a book entitled Diversity and Biotechnology of Extremophilic Microorganisms from India, which was edited by Dr. P.P. Kanekar and Dr. Sagar Kanekar. Additionally, Vignan Bharati, which is of whom Dr. Kakodkar is a patron, has come up with 2 books. And this book compiles the struggle of Swatantrata through science. There is one book in English and the other book is in Marathi. Thank you very much, sir. The next event in our program is the oration by our chief guest, Dr. Shekhar Mande. It is my privilege to introduce our chief guest, Dr. Shekhar Mande. Dr. Mande obtained his PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, molecular biophysics. His expertise as a structural biologist, as an X-ray crystallographer, has led to several revelations in the protein structure and function. He has studied the biology of Mycobacterium tuberculosis extensively.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. I've been Punekar, so I don't need, and I have met almost all of you in the past. So Dr. Kakodkar, Rakivaka, Dr. Premnath, all the dignitaries present here in the audience, friends and colleagues, members of Agarkar Research Institute family. It's a great pleasure to be here amongst all of you for the 77th Foundation Day. आप सभी को 77वीं स्थापना दिवस की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं, सर्वांना हार्दिक शुभेच्छा. As many of you know, that we started celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav last year on the 15th August as we entered the 75th year. And it was but natural to recall stories of the freedom struggle across the country, how people sacrificed their lives to win India her independence. At that time, it was realized that not only political and social workers who had contributed to India's freedom struggle, but even people from all other fields played an equally important role for us to become independent and for us to traverse the 75 years of journey post-independence. At that time, Vigyan Bharati, of which I happen to be the national president right now, we decided that we will celebrate the lives of scientists who participated in India's freedom struggle. And we actually wanted to bring forth very forcefully the point that even the scientists, with their Swadeshi spirit, how much value they brought to Indian society pre-independence and post-independence. But mostly pre-independence is what we're actually focusing right now. Now, Vigyan Bharati by itself is a science movement, it's a voluntary science movement, one of the largest in the world, but with a small difference that we want to promote science is Swadeshi spirit. And the reason for that, many of us have grown up thinking that all the science was developed in the Western countries. We were a country of snake charmers. We were a country of magicians. And what science was taught to us was essentially by Western. That was the false narratives that many of us grew up with. There's a false narrative that was propagated by the colonial powers. And therefore, we would like to change the narrative. We would like to change the narrative stating that we have always been a very prosperous, very outward looking, very peaceful, and a very scientific society. That's the outlook of Vigyan. And that's true. Let me give you some examples. Those of you who have read Shashi Tharoor's Dark Era of Darkness would recall that in year 1700, India's contribution to world GDP was 27%. In 1800, India's contribution to world GDP was 23%. So compare that to all over the world today. Today, America's contribution to world GDP is 18%. Now, if India's contribution to GDP in 1800 was 23%, we were more prosperous, you can say, at least economically, more than what America is today. When the Britishers came here, they realized some very fascinating aspects of science and technology. Extraordinarily fascinating aspects. And this is on records in many libraries, and it has been chronicled by a great number of people. I mean, one of the books that I would recommend to all the science students to read is by Dharampal, Science and Technology in the 18th Century. A must-read book. He chronicles most of the scientific development that the Britishers were fascinated that were happening in India. He talks of metallurgy, talks of astronomy and astrophysics, talks of mathematics. He talks of even in grafts that happened in Pune that they noticed how it was done, and a whole lot of other issues. And this knowledge of some of these British actually took back to Britain from India. Many of these actually Britain took back. To give an example, in metallurgy there is a process of steel making. In India it was called wood steel. You take iron ore, you mix it with some carbon. The carbon source in the typical case is used in India in wood steel is bamboo leaves, and you put it in a crucible and furnace it. What comes out is a steel of one of the highest qualities that you can actually know of. This steel has been used even in making Damascus sword and all that you would have heard of, right? None other than Michael Faraday recognized the fact that the wood steel is superior to Sheffield steel that the UK were people actually using. There is a record, Michael Faraday, stating that British must actually accept the better process of making steel that is prevalent in India. So these are the kind of things actually that have been recorded in history, that science and technology was extremely prevalent in the Indian sources. But we were taught by the colonial powers that they had brought science and technology to India. Now there is one important aspect that we have to realize, that between 1757 and 1947, the 190 years of the colonial rule, the British rule, 1757 is the first Battle of Plassey that all of you are aware, that was fought in Bengal, and 1947 is when they left. In these 190 years, one unique thing that the British practiced was they use science and technology to conquer our minds. There's one of the things actually they did, which was very unique compared to all the previous aggressors in our country. Number two, the British had no intention of integrating themselves with Indian society. They had come here purely for exploitation of our natural resources. And with this view, the British formed many scientific organizations in the country. Many of you are aware. In 1786, this Survey of India was formed, what is today called as Map Survey of India. This is the first large scientific organization that was formed in the country. And some of you would recall that George Everest was one of the Director Generals of Survey of India. They also started Botanical Survey of India. They also started Zoological Survey of India. They started Geological Survey of India, and so on and so forth. In the first few years after 1757, all these Survey of Indias were founded. And of course, they wanted to use this to conquer our minds and conquer our natural resources. Very few people realize that the loss that British caused to India's biodiversity, because Dr. Kakodkar mentioned about biodiversity, is phenomenal. It has not even been recorded how much loss to India's biodiversity was caused by the British. The whole of Northeast was converted into tea fields. Himalayas, all the trees that you find, pine and all, has been imported. They are not native Indian trees. Right? We had to counter this at some point of time. The Indian society has to counter this. And that's where the role of Indian scientists becomes very, very important. And many people actually had started thinking about this. how to counter the British narrative, and how do we make sure that we have our own system that will support science and technology as we practice and as has been traditionally practiced in the country. One of the first efforts was, of course, by what you mentioned, Mahendralal Sarkar. He founded in 1857 or 57 some years the Indian Association of Cultivation of Science. And that was completely with Swadeshi spirit, that if Indian scientists wanted to give way to their creativity, that would be through this particular association, Indian Association of Cultivation of Science. Of course, history is witness. C.V. Raman, when he was crossing Indian Association of Cultivation of Science on the road, used to work for the audit office. What caught his attention was a board called Indian Association of Cultivation of Science. He casually entered the office and asked whether he can come and work there. Of course, he was most welcome. Unfortunately, by then, Mahendralal Sarkar had passed away. His son Amritlal Sarkar was there. And Amritlal Sarkar said, by all means, you come and work here, and rest is history. The C.V. Raman's Raman effect was discovered while he was working at IICS. Now, you also mentioned about Dr. Agakar. Dr. Agakar was deeply influenced by the Indian Institute of Cultivation of Science, and therefore, when he returned to Pune, at that time, he decided that he would actually have similar efforts in Maharashtra, and you already mentioned about the Maharashtra Association of Cultivation of Science, started on very similar lines. Dr. Agakar's fame also, most of you are aware, was also in one of the things that some of the rare plants that British wanted to take to UK, he opposed that very successfully, and those species did not go abroad. But the second story that I had learned about Agarkar was actually when I was visiting ARI some years ago, and I was told this story, and I'm sure most of you know about it. It's about the 1851 fellowships. I'm sure the students might or might not be aware. But the story is like this, that in 1851, there was an expo that was organized in the UK because Britain had newfound prosperity because of the first industrial revolution, and they wanted to celebrate that. And in 1851, they arranged this expo. Most of the funding for the expo came from Indian Maharajas. The Indian princely states, they funded that particular expo. And eventually, when the expo was over, whatever money was remaining, the British committed that they would use this money to have Indian students in UK and learn the modern sciences and so on and so forth. British being British, they forgot about it. A number of incidences when British, they promised something, they conveniently forgot about it. But I'm told that SP Agakar, through his good offices, lobbied with the British, reminded them that they have to start this, and then he was successful in instituting 1851 fellowship. And what I learned in Agarkar Research Institute some years ago when I was visiting, that British did indeed start 1851 fellowship, and the first recipient of the 1851 fellowship to go to UK and do PhD, students would guess? This Homi Bhabha. So that's how Agakar actually also played a very important role in developing Indian society. So we thought in Vigyan Bharati that we should celebrate lives such as Agakar, such as Bhabha, and so on and so forth, as an year-long celebration of Indian scientists who have contributed to India's society, leading to India's independence. The first of the celebrations we did was in Delhi on 2nd and 3rd August this year. That we celebrated the life of Acharya Prafulla Chandra Ray. Most of you would be aware of PC Ray's contribution. He had made mercuric nitride, that was his scientific contribution, for which he was very famous. But he was also a supreme nationalist, and he believed, just like what Premnath was mentioning, that valorization of science for the benefit of society is an extremely important aspect. And PC Ray, with that particular view, in 1903 or something, he started the Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals, which exists even today. But he actually started that with the view that we must have indigenous industry that comes up in India. So we started with the celebration of PC Ray in early August. But after that, we have celebrated lives of the C.V. Raman. We did last month in IGCAR Kalpakam. Recently, we celebrated lives of Homi Bhabha. We did that in RRCAT Indore. And the upcoming ones are, of course, JC Bose, that is coming up at the end of this month. And we have selected 22 scientists whose lives we are going to celebrate. Not necessarily the scientists, also other people who contributed to the growth of India's science and technology ecosystem. And the two of them, very prominent them, one of them is, of course, Jamshedji Tata, whom we are going to celebrate in March in Mumbai. And the last one that we would celebrate in July, believe it or not, is Lokmanya Tilak, that we are going to do it in Pune. Now, many people are not aware of Lokmanya Tilak's contribution in science. And there is a very famous story of Pune that when the plague was rampant all across the country, Lokmanya Tilak appealed to the scientists that our scientists must come up with solutions to our problems. And he said that a plague vaccine must be found by Indian scientists. And with that view, he started something called Imperial Laboratories, which was based in Pune. He started that sometimes in 1880s. That Imperial Laboratories moved from Pune to Mukteshwar, and from Mukteshwar it moved to Izzatnagar, and today it is called Indian Veterinary Research Institute, IVRI. Right? That was founded by Lokmanya Tilak. So these are the kind of things that we would like to celebrate. Jamshedji Tata is phenomenal in his support to Indian science and developing India's ecosystem. Absolutely phenomenal. All of you are aware of the story that he and Swami Vivekananda had an accidental meeting when they were traveling from Japan to US. All of you are aware of this particular story in 1893. And during the conversations, it turned out that there must be an institute of higher learning in India which would promote science, technology, and also social sciences. And Jamshedji Tata also offered Swami Vivekananda to be the first director of that institute. And Swamiji, being very ascetic, he refused that. In the meanwhile, both of them passed away. But nonetheless, the institute was founded based on these ideas in 1907 in Bangalore, what is today called as the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I mean, there's the story behind IISc Bangalore, how it started, through a casual conversation between Jamshedji Tata and Swami Vivekananda. The point that I'm making is that there are many, many people who went and developed India's S&T ecosystem. And about a month ago, there was a conference of the ministers of all the states in India, the science and technology ministers of all the states in India. This conference took place in Ahmedabad. And Honorable Prime Minister came and addressed this particular conference. And the Prime Minister appealed to everyone saying that as we celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we must also celebrate the achievements of our scientists and technologists and remember their contributions to development of India's science and technology. This is a very important point. Why do we want to celebrate this? Now take ourselves back to 1947. If we take ourselves back to 1947, our GDP contribution to the world had dropped to 2%. From 23% in 1800 to 1947, 2%. We were coming out of one of the largest famines that we had seen in 1943. 3 million people, 30 lakh people had died of famine because they did not get food to eat. How do we find solutions to these problems? It's only science that can provide solutions to these kind of problems. How do we make food? We had to implement democracy. Whole world was laughing at India and they were waiting that how long India is going to survive as one nation. They thought India will break into princely states in no time. This was exactly what the Western powers thought. And democracy? No way. India could not implement democracy. But these are the challenges that our society had. And we did it post 1947. And we did it gloriously. Absolutely gloriously. So much so that what we have done post 1947 is a lesson to all the world that how we have developed our society. We have a strong space program. We have a strong atomic energy program. We have a very vibrant democracy. We have solved our food problem. We have solved even some of the health problems. Many of the things which were unthinkable in 1947 for the world to do, India, by adopting science and technology as the vehicle of the growth of our society, we were able to do it. There were about 60 or 70 countries that became independent, plus minus 5-10 years, 1947. 60 or 70 countries, whole of African continent. whole of Southeast Asia. They became independent around the time India became independent. India stands out as a unique example where we have made so much progress that we can actually sit in a hall like this and discuss this. Go to Africa and find out those countries which became independent around our time. And it is remarkable. Come the pandemic, last 2 years. God forbidden, this pandemic had arrived 30 years ago, we would be dependent upon Moderna and Pfizer. Moderna and Pfizer, let me tell you, I was at the helm of the affairs. They were trying to twist our arms to come to the country. I was personally involved in the discussions with Moderna, how they can come to India and set up a factory. We were trying to find out whether Pfizer would come here. But they were twisting our arms, much as the same as they twisted our arms in the development of atomic energy program. Much the same, they were twisting our arms in developing supercomputers and all in India. But with the 75 years of the confidence that we have, and with a very strong science and technology to back up, haven't we done wonderful? Isn't India's death rate per million among the lowest in advanced economies? How many people per million died in Europe and US? Now, Western media will give a color, they have undercounted deaths. Let me tell you personal experiences. Once again, I was at the helm of the affair. I have traveled through rural India, myself at the peak, right? Be it September 2020, our first peak, or be May 2021, our second peak. I have traveled through rural India myself in many places, Western UP, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh and all. And we were trying to figure out in villages how many people were dying. The death rate in our rural areas was abysmally low. It was very surprising to us. That population was not dying as much as the Western population was. And Western media, although criticizes us heavily for undercounting our deaths, this narrative of Western media, I can tell you with 100% confidence, is absolutely wrong. We dealt with pandemic much better than many other countries did. We developed our own vaccines. We developed our own diagnostic kits. We made sure that people in the remotest areas could be vaccinated. Our people went there. We developed drone technologies that can take vaccine from an area which is not reachable very easily. And I have witnessed that myself. I'm telling a story from my own experiences. I'm not telling stories that come in newspapers. It's remarkable how we have done. And therefore, it's important that we must celebrate the achievements of our own and not be caught down by the narrative that we are told by the Western media, TV, newspapers, and others, and be very proud of ourselves and march ahead for the future generations. The future of humanity has many, many problems to tackle. There are huge issues that await us to tackle that. And I believe many of the solutions would come from our soil for tackling the future. And that's because one of the things that has been taught to us, has been ingrained in our culture, is that, and which is very different than how actually the Western nations look at science and technology, is that science and technology is not understanding the material part of the world alone, but science and technology also is an integration of human mind and spirit, as we call Atma, into that world. If we integrate our cultural learnings or our cultural teachings, that science and technology also has a human angle and human spirit, I am sure that we will do much better and we will have solutions to offer for the future of humanity in which everyone lives peacefully. Whether it be plants, animals, insects, humans, all of us have our own space in the universe and all of us will continue to live peacefully in the future of that world. And I'm pretty sure the younger audience here has a lot to contribute to that future of humanity as we march towards 2047. Thank you all very much and felicitations to all of you once again.
Thank you so very much for the inspirational talk, sir. Now I request our director to felicitate Dr. Mande. As Dr. Mande said, time to celebrate the success. Would like to also felicitate our ARI scientists for their scientific achievements. For this, at first I would like to invite our past president MACS, Dr. D.R. Bapat on the stage, and also I request Dr. Manu Jog to kindly accompany him. I request Dr. Shekhar Mande to felicitate Dr. Bapat.
Has received the lifetime for his work for more than 3 decades on the traditional ancient grain, sorghum and pearl millet. He is popularly known as the senior sorghum breeder. He was involved in hybrid extension program of NARS, mainly in Maharashtra and the adjoining states. His experience led to the farmers to increase their productivity rate of millets in Maharashtra region by more than 3 to 4 times. Similarly, in pearl millet too, he revolutionized the farming approach under rain-fed conditions, and his efforts have received recognition. Many congratulations, Dr. Bapat.
I invite our scientist, Dr. Karthik Balasubramanian on.
Dr. Karthik has received the esteemed 19th T.N. Khushu Memorial Award. The T.N. Khushu Memorial Award was instituted to honor the legacy of the world-renowned environmental scientist Dr. T.N. Khushu. Dr. Karthik has received the award for his stellar effort in exploring and discovering the algal biodiversity in India.
Now I invite our scientist, Dr. Virendra Gajbhiye on stage. And I request Dr. V. Premnath to felicitate Dr. Virendra Gajbhiye.
Dr. Virender is one of the leading scientists at ARI working in the area of nanobioscience. He has featured in the Stanford University ranking for top 2% of scientists for 2 years consecutively. Congratulations, Dr. Virender. We would now like to felicitate ARI scientists for the ARI employees for achieving 25 years of service. And for this, I invite Professor Dr. Kakodkar to kindly felicitate our employees. I request Dr. B.C. Behra, Scientist E, Biodiversity and Paleobiology Group, kindly come to the dais. I request Mr. H.N. Mate, Sir B. Stores come on the dais. Mr. B.N. Wagmare. Congratulations. Mr. B.N. Wagmare, Technical Officer A, Genetics and Plant Breeding Group. Dr. R.J. Waghole, Technical Officer A, Bioprospecting Group. The fifth name on the list is our director, sir, Dr. P.K. Dharkefalkar, Bioenergy Group, has also achieved 25 years of service. Thank you very much, sir. Next event is the presidential address by the President, Dr. Anil Kakodkar, and I am privileged to introduce you, sir. The President MSCS is world-renowned scientist. Although Dr. Kakodkar does not require any introduction for his list, I would like to highlight his illustrious achievements for the benefit of the students of ARI. Dr. Anil Kakodkar joined Baba Atomic Research Center in 1964, and he became the youngest director of BARC in the year 1996. Dr. Kakodkar was a former chairman of Atomic Energy Commission of India, and he is currently the Chancellor, Homi Bhabha National Institute, Mumbai. Dr. Kakodkar was a part of the first peaceful nuclear explosion experiment that India conducted on May 18, 1974 at Pokhran. Subsequent successful nuclear tests were conducted under his leadership and earned India a distinctive status as a self-reliant country with advanced nuclear technology. Dr. Kakodkar also deployed nuclear technologies for better quality of life of our people, which covered radiation processing of food and agro products, agriculture with emphasis on oil seeds and pulses, healthcare, particularly related to cancer, urban and rural waste management, and desalination of water. His innovative contributions to human resource development activities involve establishment of the National Institutes of Science, Education and Research, DAE Mumbai University Center for Basic Sciences, and the Homi Bhabha National Institute. Several national institutions have greatly benefited from the able guidance of Dr. Kakodkar. Sir presently devotes his time primarily to issues related to energy, education, and societal development. Dr. Kakodkar has been honored by all the 3 Padma Awards and the highest state awards from Maharashtra, Goa, Madhya Pradesh, and besides several national and international awards. With this introduction, I kindly welcome Dr. Kakodkar to please.
Dr. Shekhar Mande, Dr. Premnath, Dr. distinguished colleagues, governing bodies of Maharashtra Association of Cultivation of Science, governing bodies of ARI, dear colleagues from ARI, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, compliments to all of you. I think I should include me also, say all of us on the foundation day. And I think it was very interesting for me because I missed out. So, although I had read the history of MACS, but hearing spoken word seems to be always more effective than a read word. Dr. Dakewal. Every Founders Day, obviously tradition, do stock taking of what we had done, recognize people who have demonstrated exemplary performance, and then reflect upon where we want to go, what we want to do. So, in that context, our chief guest lecture was very interesting. And I want to take this forward. Uh, Clear that nations and societies, or for that matter, even human civilization, has progressed or progressed essentially because we are dealing with beings. Human beings have extraordinary thinking power compared to any other animal species, and that leads to any evolutions, but that leads to special ability to understand nature, special ability create some additional facilities that leads to empowerment of human beings in preference to other animal species. And then, of course, this process goes on, and that's how we are here at this stage. Here, just like a heterogeneous system, or maybe diversity, better words, a diverse system, uh, where respect diversity, because that's the basis of kind of solution in one. The while human beings have evolved, it's not that all of them have evolved equally well. Depending on the competence at different points of time, there has been different rates of progress. That's what happens in all children are not alike. But for them, all of them are equally important, although they are not alike. Now, what we see today, for example, as Dr. Mande rightly pointed out, till around 1700, India was decidedly the largest economy in the world. And now I don't want to get into the geography of that, but uh, India excelled in almost everything. Excelled in agriculture, excelled in technology, excelled in trade, and trade not just within countries but also across the. So then on one side we suffered exploitation by the foreign powers. Of course, I think we've been suffering exploitation even earlier. And at the same time came industrial era, where others, they moved much faster than what we could. And so this equation of relative economic strength got significantly altered. The fact was, India was a large country. The fact is that we have great demographic dividend. We have youth, capable youth. They are at their level of development in terms of their capabilities. But that simple number has been a big force as far as India is concerned, and it will continue to be a big force for some time, not all time, but for some time. And so, going forward, uh, I think when we look at, we had 1947 got our independence. We had around 1990s a new independence, because that's where we adopted policy led to a faster economic, or start of a faster economic development. Now we are in a completely new world. A new world where now we are kind of moving from industrial era, knowledge era. Yeah? We have a whole set of new technologies. And although they are in their own sectoral domains, but knowledge or knowledge technologies is playing an important role in terms of how we do the technologies, how we deploy technologies, and how business gets built around those technologies. So it looks to me that now now that we are masters of our own destiny, now that we still have our demographic dividend, and that we have the ambition of regaining the past. And what I mean by that is we should have the ambition of India again reaching and not just the highest GDP, but I would say highest per capita GDP, because that is the real yardstick of regaining the so-called preeminent place for our country. So I recall when I was doing work for IITs, all of us who were a part of that committee went to China to study how the Chinese academic system has evolved up to that point and what are their next steps they want to take. And so in one of the conversations with the president of one of the Chinese universities, and this is around 2010, 2011, and that is the time China had significantly expanded its higher education system. A large number of new universities were created. In fact, I saw brand new campuses, several of them. They had invested something like $1 billion yuans in each of the campuses, a capacity of around 20,000, 25,000 students on each campus. But that was also the time when newspapers, a lot of criticism used to come about China, saying that Chinese publications, the rate has gone up, number of publications is very high, but the quality is very poor. And that was in fact the case at that time. So when we're discussing with this particular gentleman, the president of that university, we asked him, and that was also the time when China had just surpassed Japan in terms of its own GDP. So we asked him that, look, you have implemented this 10-year program on higher education. You have created this huge infrastructure building. And in fact, I asked quite plainly that, but we also hear in media that the quality of science publications in China is very poor. So now what are your plans for the next 10 years? And I want to tell you what that gentleman told us. He began by saying our economy is growing. And Mr. Mohandas Pai was with our group. So he says, no, it's not just growing, you have just surpassed Japan. And he would take no cognizance of that. Sort of ignored that statement, but says our economy is growing. Very poor fashion, that manner. And then he says, maybe one day Chinese economy will be the biggest in the world. The next statement was, so we require leaders. And the next statement was, so we require leaders not just to lead China, but to lead the whole world. And I must tell you, as I was listening, it sent shivers down my spine. And I came back, and the next interaction with our foreign minister at that time, I told him that, look, this is what China is thinking, you better watch out. Anyway, political people have the receptivity is what it is. The point I wish to make is today that we are remembering Professor Agarkar. He came to Pune after spending a lot of time at Calcutta, Indian Association of Cultivation of Science. And that was the time, that group in Calcutta, I don't have to recount this of you. But the point that we need to recognize is those were the scientists who were doing great science, Not only that Sir C.V. Raman got Nobel Prize, but I think several people in that contemporary ecosystem had done work which are of the same class. I don't want to get into that, why only one Nobel Prize. I think at that time, there were people who could have got India, at least 2 or 3 people who could have got India Nobel Prize. But leave that as it may. But the question is, today our science system is so big, and we are still asking this question about what is it that we need to do, take our research to that level. Those people, while they were doing good science, I think they were all nationalists to the core. They were all deeply concerned about India and the history that we heard as to group in Pune, Nachikelkar and others put together. They felt the need of creating a science institution in Pune ahead of anybody else. So I think this relationship between this science and the so-called through science take development forward and through science, technology and the resulting development take the nation forward is, of course, we all recognize, we all talk about it. But in terms of their actions, I think we should recognize that those people were patriots. And we need to convert our scientific activity also into a much higher level of patriotism. That is, to my mind, really important. And so I say that just like at that time getting freedom for India and carrying India's development forward was the key objective front of the scientific community of the time, I think taking India's per capita GDP to the best, to the level at least comparable with the best in the world or be higher than the best in the world should be our objective. And the same demographic dividend and our forward movement in science research and also conversion of technology, we should scale it up to that level to be able to achieve that. How can we do that? Individuals, of course, play very important role. But I think the institutions and ecosystem where individuals work also plays an important. And it looks to me that that's another area where we should pay greater attention. I often wonder, for example, we had Indian Institute of Science, which came through that casual dialogue. Clearly the best institution in the country. But when you look at that global ranking of universities, why is it that we are not able to take even one institution in top 50 or at least top 100? Why is it we have institutions which are more than 100 years old? if you look at the top institutions in the world, top 10, top 15, if you take, a significant fraction of those top institutions, in fact, they are few hundred years old. Take the case of Cambridge, take the case of Oxford, take the case of Harvard, and a few others. These are all institutions which are a few hundred years. I'm not saying that all institutions maintain their preeminent place, but we must understand what it takes for institutions to mature and flourish as they age. And of course, there are always the natural phenomena of decay. And so we have seen this. That's also a global phenomena that older the institutions, they decay out. We create new institutions. And new institutions, by way of the fact that they are on a growth path, so resources are plenty relatively. So you do better, but shall our institutions remain at the same or higher or continually improve their level of excellence as they age? And that is a question that we must ask ourselves. I must compliment, and now I want to detach myself with MSCS for a moment, but I must compliment all the stalwarts of MSCS who have made sure that, of course, small institution, resource limitations are there, but I think by any standard, MSCS has maintained itself. May not be the kind of expectation I'm putting before you, but it has maintained itself to a high level of excellence. And we should be continuously on our own soul searching to see what more we can do, what more contribution we can do to national development, what more contribution we can do to we can put ARI flag as one of the most important flag in the competitive science world. And so now I'm saying this because for societies to become great in real terms, what you need is good institutions, what you need is good infrastructure, what you need is good technology, and what you need is a good way of motivating people who perform well. These are the four ingredients for taking societies forward. And I think we should continuously strive at MSCS to achieve that. Now, talking more specifically about the programs that we do here at MSC, it looks to me that we are now sitting in an era of opportunity, great opportunity. Agriculture has been a full. We have made a lot of contribution. Energy, again, contribute. Looks to me that in the new transition, the energy transition that we expect to see, a time will come when we will have to say bye-bye to fossil fuel. Time will come when everything will have to be from energy sources which do not emit carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases. I don't want to talk too much about all domains of energy. That's a much broader subject. But talking about bioenergy, I think bioenergy is now uniquely positions to, to provide energy in our kitchens, whether it is kitchens in rural areas or kitchens in urban areas. Because while electricity is one alternative, but I can't visualize an Indian kitchen running only on electricity. Because it's a QC in our habits like that. Now, so you need something, a source which gives you high temperature, or for that matter, you need a flame where the actual temperature, because uh, now if you cannot make use of the fossil fuel or LPG or PNG, then the only alternative you have is biogas in whatever form it is. Or if you now want to take the gas of future, the clean energy world, that is hydrogen or its derivatives. And I can't imagine hydrogen going into kitchens, at least for foreseeable future. So you can imagine the role bioenergy would play. And the domestic energy supply is easily around 15-20% of the total energy basket. And a good part of that is the energy for kitchen. And so I have become a champion of doing everything to make sure that the entire entire biomass that we can lay a hand on, then it could be municipal solid waste, surplus agricultural residue, could be uh, the 3G kind of biomass, but taking that to a level where we are able to fuel our kitchens, rural as well as urban, is, I think, an important mission. And we already have a good foundation. Now the question is, can we make sure that we can address every biomass, in a manner that the efficiency is the maximum, and so on and so. So energy is the next frontier, but I wanted to clarify what I mean by that. That's why this somewhat more detailed. And then, of course, the other verticals, bio nanotechnology, which you are talking about. There are many. Uh, the cataloging that you have done, and being associated with RGSTC, I am personally what has happened. And now, of course, director knows this, but mention it here. Now, I think it's important for us to create a movement of leveraging resource that we have, leveraging the plant resources, whether in terms of their medicinal values or in terms of other high value contribution which plant resources can make. And we know there is a lot of commercial, industrial, economic activity around this. But I think it's time for us to look at a few areas as thrust areas and identify a program, an end-to-end program. Start with a few plant varieties or a group of plant varieties and develop uh, some key medicinal products which have not been fully exploited, develop them, take it to the marketplace. Same thing may be true in terms of other chemicals of value. And I would strongly suggest that ARI can play a lead role. This is obviously going to be a multi-institutional activity, but ARI should play a lead institution in Maharashtra. And just like we do normally, funding agents, they invite a proposal and then select a proposal on a competitive basis. I want to reverse that. In the sense, we look at the potentialities and do a top-down approach. Decide that this is what we want to do, find out the best people, best institutions, put them together to work and track that on a mission mode. And I think there is an opportunity, and I do expect leadership role coming from ARI that con. So the point is on Founders Day today, I think let us resolve ourselves that we will adopt the same patriotic spirit of our founder. We will work to enhance the per capita income of Indians, or at least the section of society where we are able to touch with our programs. We should take per capita income of that society to the same level as the best in the world. Can we, some of you may find even difficult to even put this as an ambition. Can we think of that as an ambition and carry forward? And I think that would be the fittest tribute to memory of our founder. And let us resolve, make movement that direction. Once again, my compliments to all of you on Founders Day and wish you all the best times to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anil Kakodkar, for your most thought-provoking talk and opening the future for Agarkar Research Institute. I now request our director, sir, to felicitate Dr. Kakodkar. Very much, sir. All good things come to an end, and this program is also nearing its end. For this, I request Dr. G.K. Wagh propose the vote of thanks now.
Respected dignitaries and audience, today is the 138th birth anniversary of Professor Shankar Purushottam Agarkar, founder director of MSCS ARI. 18th November is a special occasion for us at MSCS ARI. Professor Agarkar was a renowned life scientist and an institution builder. The Founders Day function gives us an opportunity to listen to acclaimed scientists, science administrators, and institution builders. Their humility and words of wisdom inspire us. Incidentally, we are also celebrating the Platinum Jubilee and Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav. The festive look today is an assertion of Atmanirbharta in science and technology. On this occasion, Vijnan Bharati has put up a splendid display of Indian scientists and technologists. Vibha or Vigyan Bharati has always been at the forefront in supporting Atmanirbharta. Thank you, Vijnan Bharati, for the wholehearted support. Our guest of honor, Dr. Premnath, has been an institution builder. He has founded Venture Center, and ARI is proud to be associated with it. Besides, Dr. Premnath is a founder member of CSIR Tech Private Limited, Orthocrafts Innovations Private Limited, and BioImed Innovations Private Limited. Sir, your views on technology development and commercialization are of utmost relevance to the society. In one of your articles, you have articulated on the implicit biases about different professions and careers, where you have challenged common arguments such as why should an IIT engineer be wasting his life on selling books and so on. Chief guest of today's function, Punekar, Dr. Shekhar Mande, has a perspective on Indian science and technology innovations. In one of his lectures, he has mentioned about the white revolution, green revolution, purple revolution, and one of India's greatest contribution to world democracy, that is the indelible ink, the indelible ink that we put on our fingers during the times of elections. So that is India's greatest contribution to democracy and to the world. And India exports this ink to many other democratic nations. Dr. Mande has been vocal about the scientific contributions of Indians since ancient times. In December 2021, Dr. Mande was trekking in the Aravalis, south of Delhi, where he came across artifacts made by ancient Indians about 1 lakh years ago. There he came across a Stone Age tool which is made today by a technology labeled as Levallois technology. Whereas Indians made such tools thousands of years ago, the technology derives its name just 200-year-old finds of flint tools in the Levallois-Perret suburb of Paris in France. Dr. Mande has debunked the myth that science and technology is the forte of the Western civilization. Sir, your presentation has bolstered our confidence in India's contribution to the world. Today, we have had the pleasure of listening to Dr. Anil Kakodkar. The name says it all. Sir, issues related to energy, education, and societal development are close to your heart. Your concept of bridging the gap between cities and villages is popularly known as silage. The concept promotes technology-enabled sustainable development in rural areas. It is nice to see that the concept of silage is widely accepted and has come into reality. Dr. Kakodkar, sir, has stressed upon regaining the per capita GDP and patriotism. And I think we will all rise to the occasion, given the various examples that Dr. Mande has already mentioned. And today we are in the midst of a purple revolution in the areas of northern India. Thank you, Dr. Kakodkar, for your words of guidance and wisdom. Dr. Bapat, sir, we are thrilled by your achievements in agricultural science. Few years ago, Dr. Bapat, sir, came up with a voluminous Krushi Vignan Kosh, which was released at the hands of the Maharashtra State Minister of Agriculture. Bapat, sir, we congratulate you on being awarded the Lifetime Achievement Poshak Anaj Award 2022. As a matter of fact, this auditorium, where we are presently seated, was inaugurated at the hands of Dr. D.R. Bapat exactly 4 years ago on 17th November 2018. Today, we are blessed to have the elders in science to guide us. Dr. Bapat, Dr. Kakodkar, Dr. Mande, and Dr. Premnath are the elders in science. There is an adage that reads, listen to your elders' advice, not because they are always right, but because they have more experiences of being wrong. Thank you, elders, for recharging our brain cells. A big thank you to all of you. Thanks.
With this, we have come to an end to this session of the program in the morning. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much to our dignitaries who have graced the dais and have helped us to this occasion, and all the audience who have been a part of this occasion. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And lunch will be between 1 to 2 p.m. in the adjoining area.